Processed meat is the one food that cardiologists say you should never eat if you want to protect your heart after 60. And I'll be honest with you, it's probably sitting in your refrigerator right now. Every 40 seconds, someone in America has a heart attack, which adds up to 805,000 heart attacks every single year. The average age of a first heart attack is 65 for men and 72 for women. And that's what makes this personal for anyone watching who's past 60. If you're anywhere near that window, what you eat today matters more than it ever has before. The American Heart Association has set a target of 0 servings per day for processed meat, not a small amount, not occasionally, but none at all. The World Health Organization goes even further, classifying processed meat as a Group 1 carcinogen, the same category as tobacco and asbestos. That processed meat category includes bacon, sausage, hot dogs, deli meats, and that ham sandwich you've been eating for lunch for the past 30 years. You've heard warnings about red meat, salt, and sugar over the years, but the research on processed meats tells a different story. I want to show you exactly why this category has earned the top spot on the avoid list. What happens to your body after 60 is where the context starts to matter. According to the American Heart Association, approximately 75% of adults between ages 60 and 79 have some form of cardiovascular disease, and by age 80 and beyond, that number climbs to 86%. Your blood vessels grow stiffer and less elastic as the years pass, and your liver stops processing fats as efficiently as it once did. Here's something that catches most people off guard. Older adults become more sensitive to sodium. The National Institute on Aging reports that the same amount of salt will raise your blood pressure more at 70 than it did at 40. What this means is that the dietary damage your body could absorb when you were younger now hits harder. The margin for error shrinks with every birthday. The question of why processed meat specifically, rather than red meat in general or fried foods or sugar, comes down to what researchers call a perfect storm of cardiovascular harm. The sheer weight of evidence is the first thing to consider. The Framingham Heart Study, which has tracked cardiovascular health for over 70 years, laid the groundwork for understanding dietary risk factors. Building on this foundation, a major meta-analysis published in Circulation found that each 50-gram daily serving of processed meat, which is about 2 slices of bacon or 1 hot dog, increases coronary heart disease risk by 42%. An Oxford study tracked 1.4 million participants and confirmed an 18% higher risk of ischemic heart disease per 50-gram serving. The Pure study went even further, finding a 46% higher cardiovascular disease risk and 50% higher mortality risk at just 150 grams per week. Those numbers are not small, and unlike some foods where the evidence points in different directions, research on processed meat keeps arriving at the same conclusion. Processed meats contain roughly 400% more sodium and 50% more nitrates than unprocessed red meat, which brings us to the second factor. Those nitrates and nitrites, the preservatives that give bacon and hot dogs their pink color and long shelf life, trigger something called oxidative stress. They damage the inner lining of your blood vessels, and that accelerates plaque formation. A 2022 study found these nitrites associated with 19% higher hypertension risk. The harm goes deeper with heme iron, the type found in processed meats, which promotes formation of advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These compounds accelerate atherosclerosis and increase LDL cholesterol oxidation, creating what the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute calls a cascade of cardiovascular damage. The third factor involves something called TMAO, or trimethylamine N-oxide, and this is where the science gets fascinating. Dr. Stanley Hazen at the Cleveland Clinic has pioneered research showing that when you eat red and processed meats, your gut bacteria converts certain compounds into TMAO. Clinicians now use TMAO levels to predict heart attack, stroke, and death risk. Red meat eaters carry triple the TMAO levels of people eating plant-based diets. And here's the part that surprised researchers. When you stop eating red meat, your TMAO levels return to normal within about a month. Dr. Hazen put it this way: these findings reinforce current dietary recommendations that encourage all ages to follow a heart-healthy eating plan that limits red meat. This is yet another large independent verification of the importance of this pathway and its contribution to cardiovascular disease. Some facts about heart-healthy eating aren't what we assume, and I want to share a few that might surprise you. That rotisserie chicken from the grocery store that seems like a healthier choice can contain up to 4 times the sodium of plain chicken you'd prepare at home because producers inject it with saline solutions. Bread turns out to be one of the top sodium contributors in the American diet. Not chips, not bacon, but bread. A single slice can contain over 200 milligrams. Dr. Elizabeth Clotis, a cardiologist trained at Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins, points out that a plain bagel can contain 500 milligrams of sodium, which is about a third of what the American Heart Association recommends per day. Coconut oil, which gets marketed as a natural and healthy fat, actually contains more saturated fat than lard. Researchers sometimes use it in studies specifically to induce atherosclerosis. 3,400 milligrams of sodium is what the average American consumes daily. That's nearly 50% above the maximum recommendation. Here's something that might give you some hope. Dr. Dariush Mozaffarian, who directs the Food is Medicine Institute at Tufts, says that what people eat for dinner and breakfast and snacks and lunch is the single top determinant of heart health. Not genetics, not age, not even exercise, as important as that remains. Food sits at the top. A study published in the European Heart Journal in 2020 found that 69% of heart disease deaths worldwide could be prevented with healthier diets. Controlling blood pressure came in at 54% and managing cholesterol at 42%. Diet is the biggest lever you have. Evidence shows that damage can actually be reversed. Dr. Dean Ornish's research published in JAMA demonstrated that intensive lifestyle changes, including diet, produced more regression of coronary atherosclerosis after 5 years than drugs or surgery. Former President Bill Clinton adopted his plant-based approach in 2010 after his cardiac bypass grafts got clogged, proving that even high-profile patients can benefit from these dietary principles that echo the Mediterranean diet's protective effects. The ongoing scientific debates deserve a fair hearing because nutrition science rarely delivers simple answers. Controversy still swirls around saturated fat. Some researchers argue that limiting saturated fat doesn't significantly reduce cardiovascular mortality for everyone, though a December 2025 review found it does benefit high-risk individuals specifically. Debate continues about whether sodium recommendations are too strict for the general population. On processed meat, the consensus holds remarkably firm. The mechanisms are well understood. The dose-response relationship is clear, and the American Heart Association's recommendation of 0 servings is about as definitive as dietary guidance gets. Dr. Sharon Hayes at Mayo Clinic offers a balanced perspective. There isn't a food that will save your life, and there isn't one that's going to kill you. It is about balance. She's right about that. One slice of bacon at a holiday breakfast isn't going to trigger a heart attack. The patterns are what matter. The daily habits are what matter. And after 60, they matter more than they did before. Let me bring this back to where we started. If there's one food to avoid for heart attack prevention after 60, the evidence points to processed meats, which means bacon, sausages, hot dogs, and deli meats, not because they're uniquely evil, but because they combine high sodium, harmful preservatives, saturated fat, heme iron, and TMAO production in a way that hits aging cardiovascular systems especially hard. The good news is that this sits within your control. Unlike your age or your family history, you get to decide what goes on your plate tonight. That decision, repeated over months and years, may be the most powerful heart protection available to you. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing for more evidence-based health information. I'd love to hear from you in the comments about whether your doctor has talked to you about processed meats or whether you've made changes to your diet for heart health. Thanks for watching.